Hello, and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad that you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We have Peter Evans on, who's this remarkable gentleman who's been in the New York area for some time, now is living on the West Coast. He's originally from Australia and is an Olympic medal winner in swimming. He's won a number of medals, and his life since then has been really very interesting. He's trekked around the world over 20 times, traveling, meeting people, meeting different spiritual masters along the way. And he has come to synthesize a lot of his learning together in work he's currently doing, working with the emotional body, which he describes as being a bridge between the spirit world, our spiritual lives, and our physical. The work he's doing is really quite momentous, and that's why we wanted to have him on the show today to describe it so all of you can learn a little bit more about the importance of our emotional body in our lives and in our health. So welcome, Peter.
Thanks.
Great to have you.
Thanks, Mitch.
Good to see you. It's been a
good
while,
to see you too. It has been a while.
Yeah. So what is it that originally opened up this sphere for you of all, because you've been involved in nutrition, you've obviously been involved a lot with physical health.
Right.
What is it that brought you into the emotional domain?
What really brought me into the emotional domain, I think initially, was way back when I was swimming, and when I won a gold medal, I realized that it was a deeply emotionally moving experience.
Yeah.
And then as I got into meditation and things sort of later in my life, I was able to remember that time and go, wow, this has all of those components. But I would never realize, and I think, in the West, we don't realize how everything we do, everything we think, everything we buy is based upon an emotion. And we act emotionally.
Madison Avenue knows that, I'll tell you.
Yeah, we act, everything is emotion. And,
True.
And it was that realization in my own life that I realized that to reach enlightenment, to experience direct relationship with soul and with spirit, required certain emotions being present and also being healed. Otherwise, what would take place is that you would go unconscious. You would go into anger. You would go into fear.
Mm-hmm.
And these were the energies that were needed for the reaching of the higher spiritual states.
What do you mean by that?
Well, to really harness them. To really harness your emotions.
Each of those, even anger, let's say?
Yeah, to harness it, to realize that anger in its rightful place is very healing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when it's suppressed, when it's stuffed down, when it's blocked, that's when it becomes aberrant. That's when the behavior starts to really disturb the physical body. It starts to create behaviors, either drug addictions or acting out. And it's based upon that suppression of that emotion.
Well, Freud said this. Wilhelm Reich certainly said this. I mean, it was understood really in classical psychology in the West, that to repress any emotion was to create an imbalance in the system, and it would seek expression somewhere.
And that's where, I have a lot of work now I'm doing with different psychotherapists and things, where I'm able to start where they get to. So it may take them 10 years to get to where I start.
Oh.
Because they are identifying a problem, they're dialoguing. It's like, I use the analogy of a tree in the garden. It's like you may have had that slight emotional upset as a very young child or in the womb or through some trauma, and it was like a little seedling that was planted into the emotional body. And now that you're 20, 30, 40, 50, and now it's this massive tree, and you have no idea how it got there. Its roots are getting into the pipes, into the foundations.
Right.
It's blocking the spiritual light. It's not allowing you to really get a clear picture. It's taking all the nutrient out of the soil. So really the work that I'm doing and working on is really removing that tree or removing that blockage from the emotional body, rather than pruning it or medicating it or having a dialogue with it or trying to negotiate around it.
Yes.
Let's just go to the point where that was planted, because the emotional body exists in the now.
Sure.
So when spiritual energy becomes available to us, it has to pass through or over that emotional bridge. So if you had serious trauma as a child and then your heart closed off, then when you reach a higher state of spiritual awareness, your heart wants to open up. But it's that wound or that blockage that will force you back because you basically swore that you would never ever go there again.
It's too painful.
It's too painful. And that creates a physical block. That creates the place where the body doesn't have an opportunity to express the joy or the happiness or the ecstasy that is available to us at this time on this planet.
Sure. In fact, you could even say the entire human body and human life is designed to experience a certain level,
right,
very profound levels of ecstasy and joy.
Exactly.
And it's our misunderstanding of that, our misconstruing of that, which has us live a life which is the way it is.
Yeah. And it's also that our emotional body, through the spiritual body, it requires healing. It requires that wound to be cleaned. It's like if we think of the physical body, if the physical body has a wound, then you would clean it out. You would take the splinters or the shrapnel or the infection and you would clean it.
Sure.
And then if the wound's too big, you would sew it up, would look after it. But the wound heals itself. So really, we call ourselves healers and we do healings, but really what I see it is we're actually taking everything out of the wound because it heals itself.
You're creating the circumstances for that to happen in a more expeditious way.
Yeah, it's like taking your hand out of between the elevator doors. If you take that energy out, then the doors, the breach, the hull, the whatever it is the body has will heal up. And that then creates an opportunity for us to be more like an inflated balloon rather than a flat balloon or a flat tire. Mm-hmm. So we pull out the nail out of the tire or we pull out the splinter, it then heals itself, and then we can reinstate the spiritual energy and it will create a fullness of presence.
It's the idea, Peter, that has been around for ages, which is that only God heals.
Right.
Or only nature heals.
Yeah.
And we're just there to, create the conditions in a sense by cleaning out the wound, as you said, and so it can heal and do its thing.
Yeah, by addressing it, by dressing the wound and really understanding that there are principles within our culture as Westerners that we have a deep ability to experience emotion. We have more ability to experience emotion than any other culture right now. Because we are so
repressed.
We're so repressed, but we're so into it.
Yeah.
Our media, our TV, all these things.
We're in an emotional culture.
We are an emotional culture.
Interesting. Having studied Chinese medicine years ago, it was observed by one of my teachers that they don't have words for something like depression.
Right.
They have suppression of chest, they refer to, or quietness of chest, something like that. But they don't talk about heartbroken.
Yeah.
Or sadness. To some extent grieving, but they don't have words really for anger. It's not an emotional, and all you have to do is look at a Chinese person in general, and they're placid.
Right.
Because the culture does not breed emotionality. Here, quiet down. In New York in particular, it's pretty wild. It's like too much in the other direction in a way.
Yeah, it's like a horse that's been harnessed, and we've just let that horse run.
Yeah.
It's just bolting and kicking and stomping, and we as the rider on the horse, or as the spirit that is riding the horse, we just get thrown wherever it wants to go. Right. And then in the other cultures, the horse is completely subdued. It's not given its own head. It's not really allowed to express itself.
True.
So really it's about the marrying of these Eastern cultures and these Western cultures and understanding that we as a spirit have to find a new way through. We have to understand that it's the emotion that reaches us to the higher spiritual planes.
Now, when you've been influenced a lot by, some of the teachers that you have studied with, you've studied Chinese medicine, etc., how do they all come together? And what does your practice look like? I mean, if somebody comes to you, what goes on?
Well, it really...
I need to experience it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really... I use a combination of the Chinese 5-element system, understanding that each organ has an emotional reservoir. The emotions live in the organs, rather than Western therapy, which is more like trying to heal it through the brain and through brain chemistry. They're trying to medicate it's like a computer. You have the software and you have the hardware. And the organs are the software programs. So if you want to change the program, you have to change the software. So it has components of going in and actually addressing the emotional blockages in the organs. Someone can come to me and say, I've got...
Are you doing this hands-on?
Hands-on.
Are you manipulating
hands-on?
Muscle and...
No, more energetically, more going in through the voice, through very gentle touch, also working on the energy fields outside of the body. And just really getting into, a lot of people getting into the belly, getting into the solar plexus, which is, in the Chinese, is the mind of the mind. So learning to quiet the mind, and also taking out things that we now know of in the more advanced sort of New Age Western practices of entity removal, implants, also loved ones who've died, themselves to people's bodies. A mother, a child can take on a disease from a parent that's passed away because the emotion is the cause of that disease. So if you have a relationship or an attachment, negatively or positively, to a loved one or to a parent, and they pass away, then you can take on all of their unresolved emotions and start processing them. You can't get rid of them because they're not yours, but you can take them on. And those emotions become they become blockages in the energy field.
What about someone who sets out to resolve whatever it is that is in their way somehow, whether it's from a parent or...
Right, well then how that takes place is really, I use the analogy, in living in California, most Californians really get this analogy. It's like I've got like the gardening team. I've got the Mexican, team who just comes in and just chops down trees and gets the leaf blower out, and by the end of the day, you've got a whole
clean garden.
The trees are out. They've taken all the trash with them.
The
weeds. Everything's just been done. And rather than you trying to prune them a little bit and rake up every afternoon, or spend a weekend, it's really more of an understanding that there are these angelic realms, these spiritual realms that are now very available to us to do all of the work. All we need to do all we need to do is really understand that it is emotional. It is a place where we are reluctant to acknowledge that there is still damage.
Yep.
That there is still something that happened when we were 6 or 5 or 8 or 10, and that wound is so infected and so raw that even if someone even looks like they're going to get near it, our whole being will recoil. It'll contract. It'll behave really strangely because we're so oversensitized to that wound.
Absolutely. We do everything to cover it.
Yeah, we do.
Just like we do physically. If we've hurt our knee, we will make movements so to avoid putting pressure and weight on that knee.
Exactly.
As example.
Yeah. And it really goes back to a lot of the Christ principles where we as a soul, we may experience, we feel like we have leprosy, feel like that we're lame, that we're blind, that we can't see. And these have a lot to do with our soul. These have a lot to do with those emotional damages.
Sure.
Because so much of what I see happening in my practice and what I know is happening more and more globally is that when the emotional body heals, the physical body will get straight in line with that. And many physical problems will just disappear. Like, they appear to be miraculous.
Yes.
But it's actually because the physical body no longer has to express the wound.
Right.
Because
the cause of the physical problem has been eliminated.
Exactly.
Because it exists, the cause on the emotional plane.
On the emotional plane. Yeah, on the emotional plane. And then all of a sudden the person goes, oh my God, I'm sleeping better than I've ever slept my whole life. Or, or my eyes, I can see better.
Yes.
And it was all based upon the message that was trying to make its way through, but it was being ignored. And that's a lot of what happens to us emotionally when we're in our youth. We don't get healing of our emotions.
Right.
We're told to just forget about them.
Well, our educational system, Peter, is completely designed toward intellectual growth, not emotional.
Right.
I mean, in general.
Right.
And things are changing a little bit these days. There's more of an understanding of character and of human values and the like, which is becoming part of the fabric of education. But in general, it has to do with the ABCs, mathematics, science, and it's all intellectual rigor.
Right.
And that's a very good thing. I mean, that's one very fine center to develop. But if it's the only thing that's developed,
Yeah.
or the physical body in sports.
Yeah.
So you've got the intellectual, you've got the physical, but what happened to the heart?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And then the seesaw has no balance. There's no
Right.
middle
There's no-
pivot point where you can actually...
The fulcrum.
Yeah, the fulcrum. Where you can actually start to create a life.
Exactly.
Very few of us in the West have a life.
Yes.
We have compartments, we have aspects, we have success, we have things like that. But very few of us have a life. And
Could you explain what you mean by that?
just that we don't have a relationship with our spirits, with our God self. We feel abandoned. We feel that something
Alone.
that we feel alone. Something's missing. We look for it in a relationship. We're marketed that we'll just find the right person and it'll all be fine, and yet we know that that's not a reality now because of all the divorce rates and things. So it's really that relationship that we all crave and we all yearn for.
Well, it's interesting though, Peter, because our relationship with each other is also an expression of the Godhead.
Right.
It's not separate from.
Right.
We don't want to set up another compartment. But I know what you mean. It's almost as though the material success that we are told about is so fantastic, and the emotional success of being in the prized relationship. All of this will solve our problems and make
Right.
us happy.
Yeah.
When those are aspects of our own inner happiness, if you will,
Yeah.
which is related to our relationship to our
Exactly.
divine self.
Exactly. And the thing that I really work with,
If that makes sense to you.
yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of, we come out of denial.
Yeah.
We really admit that there is a problem,
Yeah.
and that doesn't create the problem.
No.
I mean, a lot of things, positive thinking, affirmations and everything, we all want to say, just don't talk about the problem, just, let's just focus on the positive. And at some point, like all the 12-step programs, it's all about coming out of denial. It's about realizing that there is so much more love that we can be expressing and that we, in a way, should be expressing.
Isn't that true?
That we have to really understand that if we want to play in the next millennium, we're going to need a lot more love. We're going to need a lot more work on healing this wound.
Really true.
Because you can't get into the next game if you're injured.
That's right.
You have to be on the sidelines.
It's true. They won't let you in.
They won't let you in. And it's for your own sake.
Give us, exactly, some examples. I mean, you now have been working with a number of people out, especially in LA, and what are some of the results? Like, people come in, what kind of results have people gotten from working with you?
I've had some pretty profound results. I've had people's eyesight heal, people's panic attacks go away. A lot of stuff that we don't realize. We pick up all these like energetic hitchhikers. Like someone's, we kind of leave for the night and then we come home and there's some other entity living in our energy body and we don't know how to get rid of it, or we don't even understand it. And so these things can create a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what I see is just more of whatever that person is in need of, because the soul can minister to that. It can go, you need more money? Great, here's more money. You need a better career? Here's a better career. You need some physical health? Great, here's some physical health. Because it's all about, really in the work I do, it's all about helping the soul evolve. The physical healings are really just a byproduct of that. They're just like wow, you healed. Isn't that great? And so, it's very miraculous, it's very exciting, but it's just, that's how it happens.
it's just really interesting for the audience who's listening, all of whom have, most of whom have
Right.
one either physical or emotional
Right.
ailment, imbalance that they can see having stepped out of denial
Right.
enough to say, yeah, let me be honest with myself. I see that these are my strengths and these are my weaknesses. So I'm sure that in the work that you've been doing, there are a couple, like the guy or person with eyesight problems having
Right.
healed. There's probably something that's really kind of screaming at you. That this was like, when you finished that session, you just felt great.
Yeah, it was really profound. It was actually a woman. She had an energetic. She had someone who died attached to her eye, and that person was preventing the eye from healing because the relationship with that person, with the surgeon who did the surgery, was very negative, and the person who was attached to her had not wanted her to refer anyone to that person. So it was incredible. We took out this entity, and by the next morning she had 75% of her vision back. And so these are the things that we don't understand, we don't realize, or that we're starting to realize, that, you know, in the liver we have anger, in the stomach we have worry and anxiety, in the lungs we have sadness, in the heart we have hatred, and oftentimes
And love.
And oftentimes it's not ours. And so when we have a physical problem, we can actually go, well, you know, where did this come from? Whose is this? What was my childhood like? How long have I had this problem? Did something happen? I had a girl who was born without her esophagus attached to her stomach. And so within the first 26 hours of being born, they cut her in half and they sewed it together.
God.
Now, she didn't have a problem when she was in the womb because she didn't need it. So her whole birth sequence from the time of birth was terribly traumatic. She didn't eat for the first 6 months of her life. She was on IV drip. And ever since that time, she's had intense chronic diarrhea, where, like, just never been able to, like, 10 minutes after she's eaten, bang, that's it, straight through her system. And she's 30 now, and, you know, beautiful girl. But when we were able to go into her emotional body, really talk to the physical body, tell it that it could start to digest food now, because she wasn't taught how to her system did not know how to work. And I spoke to her sister about 5 days later, and she's like, oh my God, she hasn't had diarrhea since. And so, you know, I mean, and it may come back, it may not come back, but to see how this little 26-hour-old baby was literally cut in half and had her entire organs sewn together, you know, the emotional body was still deeply traumatized. So the physical body had healed, you know, she was alive and well.
Sure.
But that part of her system was still waiting to be told what to do or to be healed. Yeah,
That's
so
really
it's pretty
something.
wild stuff.
Now, are you diagnosing? I mean, how are you picking up that there is, let's say, that relative in that woman's eye, as an example? How is it that you are coming to recognize what it is that's blocking
Well,
a person's emotional life?
I mean, there are various ways. I mean, obviously, because I do it for so many hours a day, you get a certain, you know, you understand the language
feel.
of it, or feel of it.
Mhm.
But it's also like, I really, in my own growth, in my own evolution, I've had the realization that I'm totally okay with nothing happening. When I do a session with someone, I am so completely okay that nothing is going to happen. And that, you know, it seems like, well, that's easy. But I know myself, it's very, you have to have a lot of discipline to be really, really okay with nothing happening. Because you want them to have a result, you know, you want them to feel good, you want to do something really positive. But
Well, they're coming to you for that express
Yeah,
purpose.
exactly.
They're not coming to you for something not to happen.
Exactly.
They're coming to you for something
Exactly.
to happen.
But in that something to happen, something not to happen, there is that polarity. And if you look for something to happen, often you can push or create something that's not really the thing that's going to unlock the whole system. So what I'm really looking for, and what I help and teach other people look for, is looking for that sense in their own emotional body that there's something happened at some time that is still wounded. So it's kind of like wandering through someone's garden and going, oh, there's a tree, that needs to go. Oh, there's a weed, right, we need to pull that out. And then really identify that these things shouldn't be in that part of the garden.
Yes.
It's like the analogy of the Garden of Eden, There are certain weeds, and the whole key to being a good gardener is 80% pulling weeds, and that's really what it is. It's just really about pulling out weeds and
clearing the field.
Yeah, clearing the field.
So what should happen will happen.
Absolutely.
According to nature.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny, as I'm sitting here, Peter, it's occurring to me that an image for our emotional lives is sort of like, that fly paper that's sticky on both sides.
Right.
And a fly just drives right by and
absolutely, and just sticks.
And that's the way we are.
That's the way we are.
In general. We just pick up everything that's around and bring it right to us.
Particularly,
and it hangs out.
Absolutely.
And ferments.
and it starts to feel like it's ours.
That's right.
And in the West, it's really all about, and I really teach this to people, it's like if you can own your anger, if you can just for a minute just understand that when you're angry, that it's coming from within you, and that someone has triggered that, and that there is a deep wound there, and a deep frustration of love, that in itself will begin something that you'll start to own your own experience and not project it. And in that moment, because you can't be angry and awake in the same moment. So when you can just wake up and go, oh, you've triggered me, and hold on to that energy and let it up into the heart, then things start to move very quickly. Because so many people, particularly the people who watch you regularly or are just tuning in for the first time, they all have started their awakening process. They're all searching. They're all looking. They're hungry. And just like the physical body needs food, the emotional body needs food. So it's all about learning that our emotional body wants to eat pure, loving feelings and emotions, not negatives and dark, heavy energies, which is what we may have been fed as a child.
That's right.
And said, this is love. I'm going to beat you. And so we went, oh, okay, I'll eat this.
Exactly. That was really beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was really right from the heart and really a poignant message. And I thank you for that and for the work you're doing. And
thank you.
Keep it up.
Great. Thanks.
Great to have you on.
Yeah.
This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed that. I did. And please give a call at 212-420-0800 and share your thoughts and feelings with me. I'd love to hear from you. I look forward to seeing you all next week.
In most California. By the end of the day,